my whole life. I've been the kind of girl who knows what she wants and goes for it. You can call it ambitious, or you can call it selfish. I guess it just depends on who you ask. My name is Kinsley, and I'm 31 years old. I always got what I wanted, and I never really had to fight for it. I wasn't born with a silver spoon, but I was pretty and smart. And guys always seem to fall over themselves to do things for me. It's a nice way to live, I'll admit. But things don't always go as planned. And sometimes, when you think you've got everything figured out, the world just kinda laughs in your face. I met my husband, Owen, at a work thing. We didn't work at the same company, but our industries were kinda linked, and there was this big mixer. I saw him from across the room and he was different. He wasn't like the other guys who would try to come up with clever lines or talk about their jobs. He was just kinda standing there, talking to a friend, looking all calm and collected. He wasn't loud, and he wasn't trying to be the center of attention. He just was. I made my way over there, and we started talking. It was easy, like we'd known each other forever. He was a good listener, and he asked me questions about myself. He didn't just wait for his turn to talk. He was a breath of fresh air. We started dating after that night, and it was a whirlwind. He was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. He was steady, reliable, and he adored me. He'd bring me coffee in bed, plan little weekend trips, and he always remembered the little things, like how I hate cilantro and how I like to sleep with a fan on, even in the winter. He wasn't a big spender, but he was good with money. He worked in finance, and he was really good at it. So we were comfortable. We bought a little starter home, and we were happy, or at least. I thought our lives settled into a comfortable routine. We both worked hard. We'd cook dinner together sometimes, and we'd binge watch shows on the couch. We had a good group of friends, and we'd have people over for dinner parties and game nights. It was also normal. Too normal, maybe. I started to get antsy. I felt like something was missing, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I'd see couples on social media going on exotic vacations or doing adventurous things, and I'd feel this pang of jealousy. Our life just felt kinda stale. We were happy, but we weren't electric. There wasn't a lot of passion anymore. We were roommates who slept in the same bed. We'd have sex, but it felt more like a chore than a connection. I'd initiate it sometimes, just to see if I still had it. But it never felt like it used to. It was all a little too predictable. That's when I met Liam. He worked in the same building as me, just a few floors down. I'd see him sometimes in the elevator or in the break room, and we'd exchange pleasantries. He was older, maybe 45, and he had this confidence that was just magnetic. He was always well dressed. His laugh would echo down the hall, and he just had this energy about him. I knew he was married. I saw his wedding ring every single day, but that didn't stop me from noticing him. One day, we were both in the break room at the same time, and we started talking. It was a little more than a quick hello. We talked about our jobs, about the terrible coffee, and about our weekends. It was just an innocent conversation, but I felt that little spark I hadn't felt in a long time. It was exciting. He had this way of looking at me, like I was the only person in the room. He didn't look at me like Owen did, all comfortable and familiar. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I know what you're thinking. Don't go down that road. But I'm not a bad person. Okay, I was bored. And I was starved for attention. Owen was so wrapped up in his own life, his job, his side projects, that I felt invisible. I tried to talk to him about my day, and he'd just be on his phone, scrolling through some stock charts or something. He'd listen with half an ear, and then he'd go back to his screen. I felt like I was competing with his phone for his attention. It was so frustrating. I'd make a little joke, and he'd just give me a half-hearted chuckle without looking up. I felt like a teenager trying to get her dad to notice her. It was pathetic. So I started talking to Liam more. We started meeting for coffee on our lunch breaks. Then it was drinks after work. He was witty, charming, and he made me feel like the most important person in the world. He'd ask me about my dreams, my fears, my passions, things Owen hadn't asked me about in years. He'd look me in the eye when I talked, and he'd remember everything I told him. He was a grown man, a professional, and he was giving me all the attention I craved. And he was married. It was a thrill, a secret. I felt alive again. I started dressing up for work. I'm putting on makeup and just feeling good about myself. Owen noticed, but he didn't really say anything. He just said I looked nice and left it at that. It was like he didn't care enough to ask why I was suddenly putting in so much effort. One night, after a few too many cocktails, things went too far. It wasn't planned. It just happened. One thing led to another, and we ended up back at my place. And I told myself it was just a one-time thing, a mistake, a moment of weakness. But it wasn't. The next day, I was filled with a mix of guilt and exhilaration. I felt terrible for what I had done to Owen, but I also felt like I had a secret that made me special. It was awful, and it was incredible all at once. We kept seeing each other, and the mistake became a regular thing. We'd meet in hotels, in his car, at my place when I knew Owen was working late. It was all so cloak and dagger, and I loved the thrill of it. I felt like I was in a movie. A dangerous, exciting movie. I told myself it was just a fling, a way to get my needs met, that I wasn't in love with him, and I wasn't going to leave Owen. I was just living. Owen eventually noticed that something was off. I was always on my phone, giggling at texts, or I'd be out late for drinks with friends. He started asking me questions, and I'd get defensive. I'd say he was being paranoid, that he didn't trust me, and that I was just trying to have a life outside of him. I'd use my tears to shut down the conversation, and it always worked. He'd back off and apologize, and I'd feel this surge of power. It was awful, but it worked every time. The affair went on for about 6 months. Then one day, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a screenshot of a text message I had sent to Liam. It said, "Can't wait to see you tonight," and a picture of a coffee cup on my desk. My stomach dropped. The text was from his daughter, a teenager. Her name was Savannah. The message was long and filled with a bunch of stuff about how I was a home wrecker and a terrible person. It was a little dramatic, but I guess that's how teenagers are. My initial reaction was panic. I deleted the text and blocked the number. I figured she was just a kid and she'd get over it, but she didn't. She started a TikTok thread about it. She didn't use my name at first, just my initials and some really vague details. She talked about her dad's affair and how this older woman was ruining her family. She had a lot of followers, and the thread started to get a lot of traction. People were commenting, guessing who the other woman was. They were going through her followers, trying to figure it out. It was all a big game to them. I was mortified. I felt this creeping dread every time I opened my phone. I'd check the thread, and the comments were getting more and more hateful. The first hint of trouble at work was when a coworker, this woman named Rebecca, gave me this weird look in the break room. She was always kind of judgmental, and I never really liked her. We had a conversation about a project, and she just kept staring at me, like she knew something I didn't want her to know. I knew she was a gossip, so I figured she had heard something. I felt this cold dread. It was like I was walking on eggshells. Then I saw it on the video. Savannah had posted a video that was a little less vague. She showed a picture of the coffee cup I had on my desk, and she pointed out the unique sticker on the side from this weird little coffee shop near my office. She didn't show my face, but she showed my shoes. I had these bright red flats I always wore to work. They were a gift from Owen. Actually, then she showed a picture of the building where I worked. The comments section exploded. People were putting 2 and 2 together. The building, the coffee cup, the shoes. They were all pointing to me. The comments were brutal. They were calling me a tramp, a home wrecker, and every other name you can think of. I started getting weird looks at work. People would whisper when I walked by. I got an email from HR asking to meet with me. I knew it was about the TikTok thing. I tried to play dumb, but they had the receipts. They showed me the thread, and they told me that my behavior was a distraction to the workplace and that it was creating a hostile work environment. It was all corporate speak for we know you're sleeping with a married man and we don't want the drama. I was so mad. I felt like it was so unfair. Liam was a man, and he got to get away with it. But I was the woman, and I was being punished for it. It was a double standard, and it made me so angry. They gave me a choice, resign or be fired. I was in shock. My whole career, all my hard work, gone. Just like that, because of some kid on TikTok. I felt like my world was crumbling. I tried to talk to Liam about it, but he was all about damage control. He was worried about his reputation, his job. He was being a coward. He told me he was going to get his family back and that he couldn't talk to me anymore. I felt this rush of pure, unadulterated fury. He got to go back to his life, his family, and his job, and I was left with nothing. I went home, and Owen was there. He had heard about it all. 2. He didn't scream. He didn't yell. He just looked at me with this empty, sad look on his face. It was worse than any anger could have been. He knew. He saw the TikTok thread. He knew about Liam. He knew about everything. I tried to talk to him, to explain, but the words just wouldn't come out right. I tried to say I was sorry, but it sounded so hollow. Even to my own ears, I tried to blame him, to say he was the reason I strayed. I told him he wasn't paying attention to me, that he made me feel invisible. And then he said something that just broke me. He said, I was always here. Kinsley, you just weren't looking. The next day, he moved out. He didn't pack a suitcase. He just left with the keys in his hand. He came back a few days later when I wasn't home and took his things. He left my stuff, but he took all of his... He left the house, the car, everything. I was alone. I was unemployed, and I had no one to talk to. All my friends were suddenly too busy to see me. I called them, and they all had some excuse. I knew they were judging me. I knew they had seen the thread. I was a pariah. I spent the next few months wallowing in my own self-pity. I tried to get a new job, but the internet is forever. My name was attached to the TikTok thread, and my reputation was in tatters. I'd go on interviews, and I could just see it in their eyes. The look of recognition, the look of judgment. No one would hire me. I started to lose my savings, and I had to start looking for a cheaper place to live. I was a professional woman, and I was looking at getting a part-time job at a grocery store just to make ends meet. It was humiliating. I'd see Owen on social media sometimes. He didn't block me. He didn't have to. He just moved on. He started posting pictures of himself at the gym, doing some hikes, and he looked happy, truly happy. He had this new energy about him. He was smiling in all his pictures, and his eyes were sparkling. I saw a picture of him with a new girl. She was beautiful, and she looked like she was genuinely happy to be with him. She wasn't an Instagram model or anything. She was just a normal girl, but she looked so happy and authentic. I was so jealous I could barely stand it. I was so filled with a mix of bitterness and regret. He was living the life I should have had, the life I threw away for a fleeting moment of excitement. Then I saw a post from Liam's daughter, Savannah. It was a picture of her and her dad. She had her arm around him, and she was smiling. The caption said, "So happy to have my dad back. He's the best." The comments were all positive, all about how they were a beautiful family and how they were so glad he was back. Liam was a hero, a family man who had a moment of weakness and came back to his family. I was the villain, the homewrecker who was now unemployed and alone. It was a cold, hard slap in the face. I had lost everything, and they had all moved on with their lives. Liam was a hero. Owen was happy, and I was left with nothing but the mess I'd made. The worst part, I still couldn't bring myself to truly own it. I kept thinking about how unfair it all was, how I was just a victim of circumstance, a victim of a cruel world. I had been judged and punished for something that was his fault just as much as it was mine. I was bitter. I was angry. And I still didn't understand why I was the only one paying for it. I was a spectator to my own demise, watching as my whole life, my whole identity, was stripped away from me. I had everything, and I threw it away. And now, I have nothing. It's all gone. And I'm still here, alone, in the wreckage I created. And I still don't get why I am the only one who has to pay the price.